Hey everybody, this is Perch. A few weeks ago, some time ago, anyway, I did a video asking if critics could be good writers or good creators. Basically, can they be the same? Somebody actually, I didn't ask that. Somebody asked it, and I responded. And a couple of you thought I was taking a shot, I guess, at Critical Drinker because he made a movie or funded a movie or produced a movie or one of those. But no, uh, no, no, it was literally just somebody wrote in. I answered the question. That's it. And I think it was a good question. This is one of those ones where if I get back to ever doing a live stream again, and I have like the Pat Shand and Joe or any number of people, as Sean Murphy, but it should talk to him about this. I think it's a more interesting point to debate. But at the end of the day, my general answer came down to they could be, but one doesn't necessarily mean the other. Meaning, you can have a good, comic or comic or movie or whatever. You can be a good critic. That doesn't automatically make you a good creator of movies. Those are kind of two separate skills. I do think there's an argument to be made, which a couple of you made in the comments, that if you've seen a lot of movies and if you've critiqued a lot of movies or comics or whatever it is, that it can be a negative because you start to overthink your own work. Meaning you've seen other people do things, you've seen other stories, you've seen other things, and so when you go to write your own thing, you're slightly polluted. You've ingested more media than say most, and you've seen where things can go wrong, and so you start to overthink kind of your work. And I think that's a good point, actually. In comics, of course, you have Gail Simone went critic to creator. You've had others. Donnie Cates did some stuff for Bleeding Cool back in the day. Not anything major from what I understand. Certainly not like a mountain of work, like a big mountain. You know what? I'm not going to force the analogy. Anyway, but here's a mail that I wanted to reach out for, which takes the question more in another way. It says, what makes a good comic critic? Okay. So hello, comic reviews by Perch. That's very formal. The mail is inspired by a video you released yesterday. I hear you complain all the time about both outlets like Bleeding Cool and anti-woke channels like Ethan Van Sciver and Critical Drinker. I don't know if I complain all the time about those, but okay. Bleeding Cool, yes. Rich is a absolute trash person. But whatever. I get sick of channels and websites and everything that just have an agenda and then grind it to death. And it doesn't really matter what the agenda is. It just gets tiresome. The Mary Sue is tired. It's just tired of hearing this stuff over and over and over. It's also, I am tired of hearing about how the girl boss ruined Hollywood. I'm just personally tired. Your mileage may vary. In fact, if you haven't heard those channels, in many ways, the first, dozen times or so, it's pretty entertaining. A lot of these guys have charisma and they're entertaining. It's just, for me, I get them. Like, I get it. Like 12 times is enough. That's more it for me. It's the repetition. It's like, how many times do I have to hear it? And again, that goes for stuff like the Mary Sue or, woke, anti-woke. It doesn't really matter the ideology. Enough. I got the message. I am not one of those people that needs to hear things 500 times. Yes, I understand the irony of this channel putting out a video every day. Anyway. All right. We're back to the mail. It says, and if you didn't answer in yesterday's video, I only got halfway through. Okay, so it's 10 minutes, man. Okay, fair enough. Can someone be a good comic creator and a bad critic? Sure. Somebody can be a good critic and a bad creator. They can be a good creator and a bad critic. They can be a bad critic and a bad creator. They can be a good creator and a good critic. They can be all kinds of things. The answer in that one was there's separate skills. There's a skill of being a critic and responding to something, and then there's a skill in creating something entertaining, from scratch. And those are different things. That's it. Anyway. I think back to mail. I think the main skill that's unique to being a critic is being able to analyze and break down the object of your criticism. Creators have to instead feel the work of the medium unconsciously. I think that not only are these separate skills, they're sort of conflicting mindsets. Yeah, I'm now regretting not reading down this mail. I only got halfway through. Can you just answer what you answered in the videos? Uh, anyway, the ma- I'll finish it off. The main shared skill is having a sense of proportion. I'm unnecessarily shitting on it. It's okay. It's okay. The main shared skill is having a sense of proportion and perspective. Agreed. Creatives have to have the sense to create work enjoyable, while other people have to keep the lights on. Critics need to be able to judge whether work is not for them, is good for the people it is for. And I mean this in both the sense of them being likely to like the work and the work teaching them lessons that reinforce the United society they live in. Or, I'll give you a third one, make money. Maybe the most important one. I, I get into very fierce arguments. When I do go out and have dinner with other creatives, I've learned just not to say anything. I had a dinner at the Dallas Fan Expo. I met a couple creators during the course of the 2 days, and I just don't mention this anymore because it's not worth it. But I still believe in it 100% wholeheartedly. Comic books are commercial pieces of work. Its intent is to sell. And I do believe that there's something beautiful and romantic about being an artist. I don't think it's somehow lesser. But a commercial product, particularly where you have a Disney logo on it, or a Marvel logo, which is a Disney logo, it's a commercial product. Its intent and purpose is to make money. That's the number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 objective of it. And I get into arguments pretty much with everyone. Artists, creators, writers hate it when I say it because it's diminishing their work somehow. I think it gives it more meaning personally, but there you go. People who write things like the Marvel voices and the Pride books and other things get angry because I'll say, if you can't float this as a commercial success, there's very little use in having it. And they're like, well, what about the one boy in Des Moines, Idaho, who needs to open up a comic book and see themselves represented? Yeah, I think there's if that's your objective, to make people feel seen and heard, there's better ways to do it. And this is coming from a guy who loves comics. By the way, and it's probably a video I need to do, but absolutely nobody will read it or watch it. I'm complaining about this guy abandoning halfway through. People won't even get a quarter of the way through. Anyway, the DC Pride comic in 2025 was pretty good. And I'll explain why in at another time, but I'll basically summarize it this way. And I posted it makes the advertisements for it that much more atrocious. Like, the advertisements for it are so off what the book is. But this DC Pride, it was an anthology, but all the stories connected, not loosely connected, but really connected. Like, it told a story. It's told a story of danger. It presented its cast in good and bad lights. There were LGBTQ heroes and villains in the book that were not presented in a good light, and not in a jokey light. The only the Apollo Midnighter story was painfully bad, but the rest was it was actually shocking. They did what I've always thought they should do in these books, and they tried to make a story that mattered and had a full story rather than much of little hatchet stories. It was surprisingly good. Anyway, I'm okay. Finish this off. Okay. Anyway, because one, back to the mail, any work of fiction worth its medium teaches some sort of lesson, intentional or not. And two, people's culture being strong and unified is in all of their best interests, even if a great sacrifice is necessary. You went to a different area there, and it's a video for another time. I stand by what I said. I think the purpose of comics are to sell themselves. They're commercial vehicles, commercial products. I do think there's a higher calling and a greater purpose around making your work matter and doing something for the greater good. Those are famous last words, but that is a video for another time, and it's a really hard one. And that one is a really hard one to nail down. But we'll get to it later. Anyway, so do you agree with my assessment of what makes a creator or a particular critic good or bad, and why or why not? Yeah, I mean, more or less. I think, look, at the end of the day, critics have to respond to something. They have to present a sense of entertainment and fairness. Now, you can be a critic and just be entertaining and not fair, but generally you have to really be entertaining, or that act or that gimmick wears off fairly quickly. It is kind of the problem I have with a lot of other channels where it's really entertaining for the first 5, less entertaining for the next 5, and then falls off a cliff, around 10 to 15, where you just realize you're getting the same bit over and over again. In that case, in many ways, it's not a critic anymore. It is a creator, because a creator is doing a comedy bit for you, and the work that the critic is responding to or evaluating is, yeah, more or less irrelevant. It just doesn't matter. Uh, so but I think creators have to, especially in comics in particular, they have to generate something new while, adhering to something old. They need to bring new concepts to the table, but not in a way that's so foreign that it isolates the audience that's been built up. If it's existing, if it's an existing work, if it's something new, they still have to abide by the rules of the medium, whether it's continuity or whether it's, basic, storytelling or narration. If you're an artist, how you translate kind of visual means to a page, how you take advantage of still images to create movement in your mind. Those are all, critical skills. A critic needs to be able to, get to the heart of the work, dissect it. And I think a critic really needs to, in this case, both the creator and the critic need to have a really clear understanding of their audience. They need to understand what their audience wants, what they desire, and then they have to make a choice of how closely they adhere to it, where they decide to bump up against it, or they break the rules. You've heard videos from me in the past. I don't believe it's valid or a good idea to subvert expectations and give your audience nothing of what they want. You need to give them some of what they want, and then every now and then you need to surprise them. You need to surprise them in a way that leads to an opening or a greater amount of work to be consumed as opposed to less. But generally, creators and critics, they're just different. It's different skill sets. Doesn't mean you can't do both. I'm not saying that, just because somebody's a critic, they can't make a movie or write a comic. Of course they can. I do think there's a trap in, the current. It's easier to be a critic than a creator in a lot of respects. It's just much easier. And I think if you live in that world for too long, and if it's financially viable for you, I think like anything, like it's like a muscle, it starts to atrophy. And I think if you're a critic for too long, the creative muscle starts to weaken, and then you have to take efforts and steps to strengthen it. But that's it. Anywho, I said anywho unironically. How about that? Thank you very much for the mail. Thank you for listening to the show, sometimes even all the way through it. It's okay. And thanks for listening.